on. Kristen Welker, whose voice you just heard there in the photo opportunity, joins me now. Kristen, I think I heard you asking whether he was undercutting Rex Tillerson. Why don't you tell us what happened?
That's right. I asked President Trump if he undercut Secretary of State Rex Tillerson because he gave an interview to Forbes magazine essentially saying, I don't know if the moron comment is accurate. He calls it fake news. Of course, we broke that here on NBC. But he says, I guess we'll have to compare IQ tests, and I can tell you who is going to win. The president effectively disputing that comment undercuts his Secretary of State. And then you heard him there say, I don't believe in undercutting people, which is a striking comment for someone who obviously likes to go on the attack on Twitter. What you may not have heard as clearly, Andrea, another reporter in the room asked him if he still has confidence in Rex Tillerson. His answer to that was yes. There's one part of the tape that we haven't yet played, and that was at the very top. I asked the president if Senator Bob Corker is right, that he is in fact putting the United States on a path to World War III. The president disputed that characterization and said that we were on the wrong track before, and now we are on the right track. I also asked that question of Secretary Kissinger. He declined to weigh in or to comment. So a lot of big headlines. And to put his answer on taxes into broader context, Andrea, Jeff Mason asked him if his feud with Senator Corker could effectively derail his efforts at tax reform. And you heard him there very vigorously state that he doesn't think that will be the case. He thinks that Americans want tax reform, and so that ultimately that is something they will be able to achieve. So all of this sets the stage for what will be a very undoubtedly interesting conversation at lunch with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, Andrea.
And stand by just a moment, because as you just alluded to, there was an earlier part of that photo opportunity. We're going to play it now.
Have you ever been in the Oval Office? And with Henry Kissinger, I didn't bother asking that question because he has been in this office many, many times. But it's an honor to have Dr. Kissinger with us, a man of immense talent and experience and knowledge. And I'm going to talk to him for a while, and we're going to learn a lot. But I can say from a world standpoint, and with many of the countries that Henry and I would talk about before the election, because I would talk with Henry before the election, we've made a lot of progress with many of them. We have some outstanding, and we'll handle that as we have to handle it. But we've made a lot of progress in the Middle East with ISIS and so many other things. It's a much calmer place. But Henry, I say often, I inherited a mess, but we're fixing it. So you may want to say something. And thank you for being here, Henry. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I didn't expect this opportunity. It's always a great honor to be in this office. And I'm here at a moment when the opportunity to build a constructive, peaceful world order is very great. And the president is leaving on a trip through Asia, which I think will make a great contribution to progress and peace and prosperity. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Henry. I appreciate it.
Mr. President, is Senator Corker right that you're putting the U.S. on the path to World War III?
We were on the wrong path before. All you have to do is take a look. If you look over the last 25 years, through numerous administrations, we were on a path to a very big problem, a problem like this world has never seen. We're on the right path right now, believe me.
Mr. President, what about this with Secretary?
So that was the first part of that, Kristen, where your first question about Senator Corker, you could hear very clearly. My expectation is that Henry Kissinger was brought in for a number of reasons. First of all, to try to give advice about this confrontation with between the president and Rex Tillerson, but primarily because the president is going to China. Henry Kissinger is the author of the leading texts on China. He is the best-known American in Beijing. He knows the Chinese better than any other American, and certainly better than any other American diplomat. And his advice would be very, very important. And I would also suggest that if Rex Tillerson still has his job after today, and every day it's a Tillerson watch, it's because the president has his first Asia trip. And the idea would be you don't fire the Secretary of State right before you go to China.
I think that's exactly right, Andrea. And obviously, the stakes could not be higher as the president prepares to go on his first Asia trip. And so former Secretary Kissinger is exactly the person that he would want to talk to and seek advice from on that front. And we have been discussing for quite some time that while it does seem as though his relationship with Secretary Tillerson has become untenable, he really needs him in place and needs stability, quite frankly, before he heads to Asia and grapples with a whole host of pressing challenges, North Korea being, of course, at the top of that list. We have seen tensions mount in recent days with the president lashing out at North Korea and essentially floating the possibility of some type of military action, although, of course, all of our reporting points to the fact that diplomacy is still the strategy and the path that they are pursuing here behind the scenes. So you would anticipate that the president is going to ask him about how he should handle the situation right now with his Secretary of State as he prepares for this critical foreign policy test, Andrea.
Kristen Welker, great work, and thank you so much for rushing out to the lawn for us today.
Absolutely.
And joining me now, NBC News contributor David Ignatius, a columnist at The Washington Post, foreign policy expert, and MSNBC Global Affairs contributor Wendy Sherman, former Undersecretary of Political Affairs at the State Department. Welcome both. Ambassador Sherman, first to you. As we face this crisis with North Korea and the Secretary of State, the president's still undercutting Rex Tillerson with the Forbes interview overnight, and certainly with all of these tweets, disparaging him, his diplomacy, and also, of course, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. It's an extraordinary meltdown.
It is extraordinary, and I think Richard Haass was right this morning. We have never seen anything quite like this to undermine diplomacy. If that is, in fact, the way forward, the president's doing everything he possibly can to make diplomacy not possible.
And to you, David Ignatius, I mean, you've had a very well-informed take on Tillerson and his relationship with the president. Can he stay on beyond, let's say, the Asia trip, given this public undermining by the president?
We'll see, Andrea. If the Asia trip goes well, nothing succeeds, especially with this president-like success. He could use one, and so if there are photos from Beijing that make it look like Mar-a-Lago 2 and a positive relationship, agreement on dealing with North Korea on other regional issues, I can imagine Tillerson staying on a while. The idea that he's going to be in that job long term, it's hard to imagine, not least because it's obvious from Tillerson's body language and comments that he really does not like being in Washington, dealing with the rebuffs from the White House and all the other issues. Today was damage control day at the White House. We'll see how successful that was. Having Henry Kissinger, the ultimate wise man, come in and try to smooth things out, talk about the way forward, is part of that, I think. But we'll see about the comments afterwards. I'm guessing that this will calm down now for a little while.
And, of course, there's been a lot of rumors about Mike Pompeo. We know that he is very close to the president. They spend an hour together at least every day with the intelligence briefing. He's the CIA director. His background, West Point, Harvard Law, Kansas politician, former congressman. He sort of checks all of those points, David, in terms of someone who the president could bring over and could likely be easily confirmed.
No question that Mike Pompeo would be personality, activist demeanor, a sync with this president. He has an intimacy that I can't remember any CIA director having in terms of quasi-policy discussions. Again, I'd be surprised if they threw Tillerson off the mountain until I got to the summit, so to speak, with the China trip. So I think we'll come back to the Pompeo speculation maybe in later November.
Wendy, we're also facing the imminent decision on Iran. My reporting since last week, unless it's changed in the last couple of days, but it still seems to be decertifying the Iran deal saying that they're not living up to the spirit of the nuclear deal, even though both the International Weapons Inspectors and the CIA, I'm told, say that they are living up to the letter of the nuclear deal, and saying that they've been destabilizing in the region. There's broad support among allies in the region for this path. Going to Congress and saying do something to toughen it up, as well as taking covert action against the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the Quds Force, by just declaring this military defense wing of the Iranian government a terror group.
Yes, we're in a very difficult situation. The president has to make this decision by October 15th. We expect it to happen this week. He is really bucking his responsibility as the commander-in-chief, sending this off to the Congress and saying, I'm going to decertify, but you decide whether to reimpose sanctions or not. So this is really the beginning of the unraveling of the Iran deal. And quite frankly, for the life of me, I cannot understand how stopping Iran from getting nuclear weapons is anything but in our national security interest, and in the inverse, for the President of the United States to say, well, we don't think this is such a good idea, makes no sense at all. We are putting American security at risk just at the moment that we have North Korea on the plate as well. And the president's going to go to China, and he's going to find out China's not going to be such a willing partner if the United States backs out of the Iran deal, which was, of course, reached with China in the room as well.
Well, just to play devil's advocate, you negotiated the deal. We were with you along the way as you were doing all of this with John Kerry. But arguably, yes, for a decade at least, and longer in terms of some of the components, they can't do anything on the nuclear front. But has it empowered them with their misbehavior in Syria and elsewhere in the region, because they now have money from the unfrozen assets that they didn't have before?
Well, they were doing very malicious activity in the region before this deal. We always said they would probably get a little bit more money, the IRGC, but quite frankly, it doesn't take much for them to finance Hezbollah and to do what they're doing in the region. There is no question they're destabilizing the region and have been for quite some time, but we have a wealth of tools that we can use with our allies and partners. We should get to work on using them and make sure that the deal stays in place, because an Iran with a nuclear weapon can project more power into the region and deter the very actions that we all need to take to ensure that the destabilization stops.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.